Quite shocking, actually, for a Monday morning. Women who auctioned off their virginity. Well, you know, you have all types, as they say. We'd like to introduce someone here on set with us, Dr. Thanimalai Jagannathan, who's a consultant obstetrician and gynecologist from Tropicana Medical Center. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
Very interesting topic for a Monday morning.
It's a very sensational topic, yeah.
Have you, I'm sure you're aware, I mean, we saw the flash just now, and I'm sure you're aware that,
exactly, they're auctioning off their virginity.
I know. I mean, what's it come to these days? I mean, we are living in the 21st century, but, you know, people or girls auctioning off their virginity and not finding it sacred anymore as in the olden days?
Yes, I think that it was a conservative belief. Previously, people thought they should maintain their virginity for a married life and marriage life. They're entering into it.
Sure.
But most of the time, the virginity can be lost for other reasons as
obviously,
well.
Obviously. So, well, you're here now to actually tell us, because, you know, people, we know the term or the word so well, virginity, but what does it really mean? Maybe you can explain that to us.
The virginity is the one what people usually thought that having a penetrative sexual relationship is the one is considered as losing the virginity.
Sure.
For that, they thought initially that there is a flimsy membrane in the private part, which is called hymen. Actually, it's very flimsy. Sometimes we usually thought that if the first penetrative sexual intercourse takes place, then we thought that that membrane usually is torn, and thought that woman loses the virginity.
Sure.
But by right, we can see in women generally can lose, the hymen can be torn for other non-penetrative injuries as well.
Absolutely.
Like, for example, a woman who's very active in sports or doing gymnasts and
girls who go horse riding. That's what I hear.
Yeah, or who's bicycle riding, or any straddle injuries where they open up their thighs and legs very wide, then they tend to face injury to your private part.
So, so we're talking about sexually, when we say when a girl loses her virginity, means it's via sexual intercourse, of course.
That's what it means.
Because of the tear of the hymen.
Of the tear of the hymen.
But when it comes to the sporting stuff, the horse riding and the gymnastics and all that, is it considered, if her hymen is torn via those vehicles, does it mean that she's no longer a virgin?
No, it doesn't mean that.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that. That's the important point I would like to emphasize, that any girls, we look at the hymen and if it's torn, it doesn't mean that she had a penetrative sex. It doesn't mean that. Sometimes it can happen by excessive physical activities for whatever we have mentioned, and that could be the reason. Apart from, if we have to listen to the girl as such, is there any incident took place on any patient?
So actually, so to all our audience out there, the only way you can lose your virginity is by
having sexual relationship.
So it doesn't matter if your hymen's broken
or not. Yes, exactly.
Are there girls, you know, these are questions actually posed by our fans on Facebook. Are there cases where there are girls born without hymens?
Usually it's, if we look at the embryological development in the fetus and when the babies are born, actually, the vagina is formed by two parts, that where one urogenital sinus which grows and joins together with the external private part. So and there's an opening as is formed by a flimsy membrane, and the membrane usually is open. But most of the time, sometimes you have congenital anomalies. The membrane is not open; it's continuously fused with the vagina. Then you need, we notice that these girls, usually when they come of the menarcheal age, they won't have a normal menstrual period. Then they come and see us, then we examine them, they find that the membrane is completely closed, or you have very minute opening, then you need some form of special procedures to open up the hymen. That doesn't mean that they lose their virginity, but it needs some sort of surgical procedures is required to enlarge the hymenal orifice, not to the extent of it's torn completely. But
so very simply?
Simply, it says that it doesn't mean that if the membrane is absent, it doesn't mean that the girl has lost the virginity.
Now, I mean, I'm sure as a gynae, you know, you get a lot of girls coming to you and all that. Do you get, in today's day and age, do you get a lot of younger girls coming to you having lost their virginity? you know, below the age of 15 per se?
We can't say that they lost the virginity. They come and see us for different purposes. Actually, they don't generally, young girls come and see us for a reason of virginity. They don't come and have us checked with us. But majority of the time they come and see us.
So when you ask them questions like, you know, have you had sexual intercourse? These are teenage girls. What is their reply most of the time?
But it's a very sensitive question to ask. And most of the time when these girls come and see us, they don't come alone. They come with the parents.
And of course, it's a big taboo to speak about this in front of the parents.
And if I'm going to ask that question to any one of the girls, then the parents might get very agitated. So we have to get that information indirectly
How do you do that? I'm very curious.
Okay, that is no. We do ask, do you have any boyfriends, or you know, do you go out? How do you spend time? No, those sort of hints. You look at it. Then we find anything very point to probe upon further. Then we try to go about find when we are examining them alone or something, have a quick conversation with them. Then we get one or two information. Then we probe upon further.
Sure. I mean, I'm sure you've seen you see a lot of young women every day, you know, pertaining you know, different kinds of issues when it comes to the lower regions. And do you get a lot of the teenage girls coming to you saying, you know, with sexual diseases and
yes,
all that kind of stuff?
It's very common. We know that generally these young girls, they begin their sexual relationship a bit early, few of them. So when it happens, they are exposed to all sexually transmitted diseases and unknown, a lot of vaginal discharges, and they have infection, they have vaginal ulcers, they have small ulcers in the private part.
Oh dear.
Or sometimes they have excessive growths there. So we need to examine, and then we probe upon, when we talk to them further, then we get the full information.
Do you feel that in Malaysia, that a lot of parents, you know, they're not as open to talk about sex education with their kids?
Yes,
they don't know about these things.
You're very true about it, because most of the time the sex doesn't take place in the place, is designated place. As most often we think that it takes place only in the bedroom, but actually it's not. It takes place in every other nook and corner without you know, any lonely corner. So when it happens, most of the time it's unexpected, spontaneous. It happens. So most of the time sexual relationship takes place without any protective devices like condom. That's what we ask them to use it in unprotected sexual intercourse. Most of the time it takes place. Then finally it comes 1 week or 2 weeks later, the girl finds that she has excessive discharge or have painful when she's passing urine. When she comes and sees us, when we examine them, we notice that she has full-blown herpes. That's a small ulcer disease which causes excessive pain and discharge. And that's very common.
Herpes.
Genital herpes. That causes a lot of problems. Most of the girls fall into that.
Oh dear.
And so many other infections such as gonorrhea as well.
So this would be very good actually for the parents of teenagers to watch. I mean, not only the girls, you know, the boys have
as
to be
well. Yeah,
educated
exactly.
to know what they're doing.
Yeah, generally, we need to educate the younger generation basically about if the best thing is not to have sexual relationship until they get married.
Or rather, until they
know each other very well and are stable in the relationship. Next, even though if you have it, then have a protected sexual relationship.
Absolutely.
That'll be the
Now, we want to delve into that a little bit more, and of course, we still want to know your point of view as a doctor. So please do stay with us on the show. We're going to be taking a very short break, but when we come back, this is what we have for you in Bella Confidential. Being a teenage virgin is the new classy. When we return, we talk about what's the right way to talk to your teenage daughters, not throwing themselves at boys too easily. Stay tuned.
Dear Bella, As a mother, reading articles about young girls losing their virginity or even about teen pregnancy, it is really disappointing for me to hear about how they are influenced or being pushed. I myself have 2 daughters. The oldest one is in her teens, and like any other teenager, they go out, have fun and come home way past midnight. Recently, she has been sent home by a guy in a car, and as a mother, I am really concerned about the guy's or even her intentions, especially while they often are both in a car together after midnight. So please, Bella, help me and the other mothers out there and help us prevent this from happening to our children. What do you think we as mothers can do? Louise.
I think that's the biggest fear with parents, especially if you have daughters, teenage daughters, and we've got a panel here who've got many, many daughters. So we'd like to say a very good morning to Dr. Parental, who's a mother of 2 and a consultant aesthetic physician. And of course, we've got Nick Ilin back in the show. Welcome back. And of course, Dr. Paul Jambunathan, who's a clinical psychologist. Welcome back on the show.
I've got 2 daughters.
Father of 2 teenage daughters. Nick Ilin, you've got 3 girls. And Karen, you've got 2 girls.
There's a lot of daughters here, huh?
I have 2 boys.
2 boys.
But
Oh, this is a great mix.
But he's delivered a lot of daughters.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So we're talking about the topic today about teenage girls and, you know, why they are being so sexually active at such a young age these days, and what's your take on that? So, Paul, maybe you can start off.
Over-education, too much information and under-education.
Okay.
And not enough proper parenting. Not enough involvement of the morality and the values of your own family culture.
Okay.
If you compare it globally, a lot of people are doing a lot of things, sexual intercourse, various other kinds of sexual exploration, but they are in a comfort zone with themselves, with their spirituality, and with their norm of their culture.
Okay.
So I think if we're talking about this, we've got to put it in context within our culture and what we desire to, the kind of norm we want to develop.
Okay, okay. Nick Ilin, you've got, how old are your girls?
16, 19, and 22.
Okay, and so how, I mean, bringing up girls is no easy feat. You know,
Especially if they're very pretty.
Like the mother.
So how have you, I mean, how have you educated your daughters? I mean, they're already all grown up.
Well,
what have you imparted with them?
Very young with them. I told them that be responsible. If you want to have sex, you have to be responsible for your actions.
So you had the birds and the bees talk with them?
Very early. I think I'm a very liberal mom.
That's
and
cool.
I told them that, you know, I teach them about sex education very early. The boys too, my 2 sons too, because I tell them that they are the problem too, not just us.
Yeah, exactly.
And what takes away their virginity is actually their innocence. The innocence is the one that takes away most girls' virginity.
Very good
So,
Yes.
yeah, so I tell them, you know, I don't tell them about the birds and bees. I tell them about sex.
Okay. You're straight to the point kind of mom.
Yes. So I tell them, okay, each child is different. So I tell them, like my daughter who's 16, I tell her that, you know, you want to marry a prince. A prince is not going to marry someone who's gone around and had sex with so many other boys, you know, say they want to find a pure one, you know.
Right.
Of course, I tell the other girls, you know, like the elder ones, I tell them that, you know, you could get gonorrhea, you could get STD, you know, you have to be prepared with a condom. I'm not saying I advocate,
Of course.
sex, I mean free sex.
But whether you
have to prepare them.
I'm sure as parents, whether you know it or not, it's going to happen at some point.
And then
I
the
mean,
next thing you know, they'll
have
just
you
tell you.
dealt with that already as a father?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I've got a 22-year-old and an 18-year-old.
Okay.
And the issue, like the good doctor mentioned, so many diseases and things that happen psychologically sometimes is more damage. There's a lot of guilt and suicidal behavior.
Yes.
But it's about education first, the choices you make, and living with the consequences after that.
Choices and
I
consequences.
think it all begins at home, is what both of you say. Dr. Karen Paul, what have you got to say? How old are your girls?
Mine is a little bit younger. Mine is 6 and 9. But my 9-year-old, one fine day, I just overheard her telling her younger sister that something about boyfriend. And I was, of course, straight away, wow, you know, my little girl, still little, but she's starting to expose into this, because nowadays, I think with televisions and with their little friends, I think they're talking about it, you know, with... So I took
Hollywood
that...
exposure.
Yes, with the televisions and with some of the... Sometimes they overheard adult talking about it, like, you know. So when I heard about this word boyfriend, so then I discussed about this natural feeling towards the opposite gender. And of course, well, I didn't take it too heavy with her. She's still, you know, very young, 9 years old. But I just telling her that, you know, at this stage, you shouldn't be thinking about that. Of course, I stress the importance of education. And of course, I tell her that for mommy, because daughters at this age, you usually look at the mommy as a role model. So I just tell her that, I built my knowledge first to, you know, also tell her that until your physics, you know, your body is much more
ready.
Yes, and developed. Then you would think about that. So I had slightly different approach with my daughters. It's just like how I would tell them the importance of education. Like, for example, if you drive by and see the whole family sitting on a motorcycle, then I'll stress to her, I don't tell her that you have to be #1, you have to do straight A's and all that, but I tell her that it's very important to have good education, to have all the knowledge that you have in the world, so that, yes, you can earn a better living for yourself. So for this way, I'm telling her that you, at first, shouldn't be exploring straight into that, but preparing yourself first mentally and physically. Yes, that will come eventually one day.
It's basically mental preparation is what, I mean, we're all talking about.
Emotional. Emotional.
You mentioned something about innocence, and you said, you know, that hit a point. Would you like to elaborate on that?
That's a different definition of virginity for me.
Okay.
From a medical point of view, the doctor is absolutely right. Physiologically and anatomically, it's defined as the tear is gone.
Yes.
With or without penetration. No, with penetration, basically.
That is considered a sexual assault.
Sexual assault, yeah.
But person can lose a hymen.
Right.
Wearing a tampon.
Yes, can.
But for me, virginity now is no longer a physical issue, because it is, for me, a more psychological issue. Because there are people who are so corrupted in their minds with all the information they have, they've lost their innocence. They've lost their virginity. Virginity in its purest form actually means purity, like virgin oil, virgin coconut oil.
Exactly.
Extra virgin.
Yes.
And then they've got virgin wool. You know where that comes from?
Where?
From the sheep that runs the fastest. No, but you see, virginity is a state of mind now, and a state of emotional education and preparedness. So it's, for me, it's not so much physical as an emotional condition.
Right. From a psychological point of view, girls who lose their virginity at a younger age, in
Physical, sexual.
comparison,
You're referring to physical and sexual?
yes, in comparison to at a later stage, does that differ much in terms of their way of thinking and all that?
Most definitely. There is something called human lifespan development and stages of development, and your responsibility for yourself, for others, for society, for your families, they all change as you grow. So look at the number of babies that are junked.
I know.
They're not ready for it, but their bodies are ready for sexual intercourse and for the outcome of a successful intercourse, but they're not ready for the care, the caregiving, the responsibility of being a spouse and all that.
Yeah, sometimes you're in your 30s and you're still not ready for stuff like that.
Because it's an emotional developmental stage.
Yeah.
So you're spot on there.
Nick, Elaine, what do you have to say about that? I mean, you got married at a pretty young age. You had your babies.
24 years, 6 months. But I lost my virginity 1 week after my wedding night.
Oh,
so if anybody put a white cloth on my mattress, they'd be pretty disappointed, because I didn't know how to do it. That was the whole problem.
I see.
And so it's like, at 24 years, that's pretty old.
Exactly. I would like to emphasize the point that the first sexual relationship doesn't bleed always, you know. It doesn't bleed always.
It's a myth.
It's a myth.
Men out there, don't be alarmed.
Okay, because everybody believes that, oh, the first sexual relationship, you know, I know my wife blood, no, that means that I've penetrated properly. But most of the time, if they're doing it for the first time, everybody is trying to test out which how to do it.
Can I just say something?
Yes, please.
When I eventually had sex 1 week after my wedding, I had my period immediately. So there was, there you go.
Wrong message.
Right. So that's not the way to determine your virginity.
And sometimes the man bleeds.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes the man bleeds.
The man bleeds.
Okay, I never
You're
knew
talking
that. We
about.
learn something new every day.
Yeah, because the problem is here we're dealing with more of Muslim population. Most of the men are circumcised. It's okay. There are men. There's an equal proportion of men who are not circumcised.
Correct.
Here.
Yeah.
So when there's a prepuce there, when you retract, you can't retract. So when there's a forceful penetration, or when during excitement it doesn't know what's happening, all of a sudden after ejaculation you pull out, and they notice that they have a blood there. They might think, oh my God, I'm bleeding. Why am my wife is supposed to bleed? Why I'm bleeding?
Okay. So at least we understand the technical issues about this a lot more now. Thank you very much. Now, Dr. Karen, your kids, your daughters are going to become teenagers. Are you very worried? As a mother, are you having the notion of I should just lock them up at home, not let them watch TV?
Yeah, I know what.
Very protective mothers. I mean, the fathers would have their shotguns at home.
Yes. Well, as we're very parents, of course, in our eyes, the little girl, no matter what age, is still our little girl, and we will do our best to protect them, so that they won't get hurt in any way, physically and emotionally. So, but then again, I wouldn't lock them up because I believe that they still need to explore. But when they're ready, then I'll let them experience when they're ready in all ways, in all aspects. So I will, take them through the course, but I'll make sure that with my daughters, it's not going to be like me commanding her, but it's more like friends relationship that we can talk about and discuss heart-to-heart talk about everything. I think that would be the best.
You're right, absolutely right. But the problem is that talking doesn't take place at home. So parents are shy. Parents are shy, don't know if the son comes and talks about something, for example, they're in the adolescent age, they have pubic hair coming out. Mama, I'm having something there, I don't know how to
go ask the father.
Go and ask the father. So you shouldn't feel shy. So unless until you need a proper guidance, you need to talk to them properly. And first and foremost, we should be mentally prepared to how to handle such questions.
Yes. Yeah, I think parents.
Yeah.
I think that's...
So that's...
Just coming back to your question to the doctor.
Please.
Confidence about what's going to happen to your children, it starts with what kind of education you give.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
What kind of training you give, what kind of relationship you have, the kind of information you let them into. My eldest daughter has just been invited to a focus group on where young ladies learn their sex education from, their sexuality education from. There's a focus group going on about that at a very high university level.
Okay.
Because people are getting information from all over the place, and wrong information.
Right.
Exactly.
Irrelevant information, and sometimes culturally irrelevant as well.
Where are they getting this information from?
From all the sources.
As Paul said, it's too much of information, less education actually.
And less editing.
Proper guidance.
Okay, okay. So what we're trying to say here, that the parents actually need to be very, very aware. I mean, look, I think we here, we're quite open and we don't mind sharing and all that, but I'm sure there's a very large population of parents out there who will not do this.
They send their children for tuition, sexuality tuition outside.
Is there such a thing?
No, because it happens during maths tuition or English tuition.
I see, okay.
Not grammar classes.
No.
Sure.
But when we talk, teenagers, the more they say that the more you control them, the more they're going to rebel against you. So with you as experienced parents, what's your fine line that you draw?
For me, I don't lock them up.
No.
It's the lock has got to be in their minds. So they've got to be able to lock their minds out, So if they want to do it, they have to think about it first, think about the repercussions, the consequences, what's going to happen next. Don't just simply due to, allow...
Peer pressure.
But not really peer pressure. Sometimes I blame the boys, even at this age, sometimes the boys tell the girls, I want to show you how much I love you.
All right.
Say, the sweetest words.
Yeah, we watch all these movies like, oh, prom night is the culmination of it all, you know, it's the planning and everything. I'm like, seriously? Are we advocating this now? I mean, it's good to be open, but at the end of the day, you're right. We're talking about culture here, and us in an Asian society, in Asian culture, it's a bit different. But of course, our younger generation, they want to ape the West in a lot of ways because that's the way to follow. So it's the line that we draw here, right?
Even in the kampong, for the Malay, I don't know, we see that in the Malay kampong, you know, they say, oh, you have to keep your dara, you know, you have to keep your kedaraan and things like that. But and even without all the television...
Things happen.
Things happen, you know, because they're, you know...
Attraction.
Normal development.
Your sexual, you know, it rises.
Yeah. Many years ago, before the advent of internet, you know, there were already many people who got pregnant at a very young age, you know. So it's not. Don't blame the internet. It happens at any time.
It could happen anywhere, anytime. It's all
to
about
anyone.
education.
In Freudian development, there's something called the latency phase, and where you're interested in your private parts and how they're becoming more and more sensitive.
Sure.
And so you begin to explore, which is a very natural thing. You express your sexuality, you explore, you see differences between the two genders. You say, how do these fit together, kind of thingy. And you get excited about things. But how do we educate them about it? Only now it's creeping into the curriculum. But even then, we worry about the teachers and their qualifications.
Sure. Well, hold your thoughts. Talking about education, it's not just about educating the girls, but the boys as well. So when we come back, we're going to be continuing our discussion and, you know, what it's like to be in the guys' shoes. Stay with us.
I hoped never to see you again.
Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill are back at it again, and this time is 22 Jump Street. Boasting even more of the romantic chemistry between its stars, this sequel brings on a big changes for Officers Meet and Janko when they go deep undercover at a local college. We are giving away preview screening passes and exclusive 22nd Jump Street merchandise. Just like us on Facebook for contest details, and you could be the one of the lucky winners. Contest ends on 9th of July, so send in your entries now.
We Jump Street.
Looks like a lot of fun. 22 Jump Street. I was just saying, is it a spin-off from 21 Jump Street? Well, there's no Johnny Depp in there, but nevertheless. We're still on our topic, talking about virginity, and being a classy teen is actually very, very good these days. It's good to maintain that, but at the end of the day, it's education. That's the most important thing. Now, we're going to be turning the tables around a little bit. Where, you know, we're talking about the girls most of the time, but now we're talking about the guys. You know,
Can I leave now?
The guys want to marry the women who are still virgins, but then the guys, they may or may not be virgins. Now, we asked a couple of guys out there how important it is to them, whether they still maintain their virginity, and vice versa. Let's see what they had to say.
Well, it depends. It depends on the person.
Dara tu kira maruah lah. Kalau you suka-suka bagi dekat orang lain, you tak ada maruah lah. So, penting lah dara tu. You memang kena jaga lah. So, kalau tak ada dara serupa macam tak ada maruah lah. Suka-suka boleh bagi orang sana sini kan.
As a Muslim, the virginity is very important because it meant that that girls or woman is still following in the Muslims' ways. Okay, but in other way, if for the marriage, so it depends on situation.
Yes, it is, because I think we are in Malaysia, and we are in the eastern part of the world, so we are not westernized. So I guess it's a must for girls, for even if I have a daughter, for my daughter to preserve virginity. Yeah, I think it's very important. And as a Malay. And Malay Muslim, I guess it's very important to us. Yep.
So thank you very much, guys. It is important to you, the handful of guys who were willing to talk on the show. But what about our panel here? I mean, like, what do you think? You know, where boys are concerned, do you think the boys should be blamed equally as much as the girls when they have sexual intercourse at a very young age?
How does a girl lose her virginity if not having
Because of
sex with
boys.
another boy?
Yeah,
with a boy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It's
virginity for a long time has been related to the hymen, and so it means the female.
Yes.
But I think virginity applies, the way I described it, it applies similarly to the male.
To the male.
How old are your sons, doctor?
My son is, eldest is 10 and the second is the 3 years
Okay,
old.
so they're still very, very young. But sex education for boys, it's always the girls like, when they come of age, talking about their periods and everything. But where boys are concerned, how do you think they should be educated?
So after you don't...
No, it is adolescent age is the prime time. You need to talk to them about sex education as such. What can happen if they have sexual relationship with a girl, and most likely she can get pregnant. She can get pregnant, or we can't trust them if the girl had a previous sexual relationship. If she has an unknown disease, which you might get it. So we need to educate them on these issues as such. And mainly pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases. We need to warn them about it so that they are well prepared, number one. Number two, first and foremost is you're not supposed to have a sexual relationship before marriage. That's the point we need to emphasize them. I come from very conservative family background, so that should be emphasized always.
But boys masturbate very, very young.
Yeah.
So that in itself is already, you can't really, you have to tell them because they start now.
Yeah, so education is what we go back to, right, Paul?
Like when I was growing up, when I've had my first sort of, why is it getting a bit harder in the mornings, So I went to my dad and said, hey, what's happening? What's happening? So he said, no, this is the blood flow, this is what's happening.
Oh, your dad was cool enough to talk to you about it.
And he actually had a couple of very old, my dad's 80 plus, but he actually had a sexual atlas.
Wow.
At that time. And even before my daughters were born, before I got married, I actually bought some books when I was studying overseas and brought it back just in case, ready for it. But he explained to me the anatomy and what might happen and how do you deal with an erection. But I think the most important thing was what you do with it is more important.
Yes, of course.
The attitude you have towards it.
Yeah.
When I was 6 years old, my father actually drew a picture of a boy and a man and a woman. And he brought it, and I brought it to class, Yeah, so I brought it to class, yes, at 6 years old. Yeah,
and
that's
you got punished?
No, everybody was so happy that, here was my father who he's actually, I don't know whether he's conservative or liberal, but he taught me sex through that, he showed us a picture. I actually drew the figure and I carried it to the school, walked to school with this two, on a stick.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we pasted it on board.
At one point, I think not only just educating the boys about how to deal with their newly more testosterone influenced body, but it's also telling them how to control inhibition and also how not to hurt someone else. I don't know whether you've heard with the more recent uprising in young boys, probably like 9 to 13 years old, trying to rape girls.
You're right.
Why is that happening?
Yes.
It's happening in our local schools.
Why?
I've got cases too. It's disinhibition, it's not knowing what to do with it, and wrong information. If I have this, I'm ready. And there's something else. There's something else called precocious puberty.
Yes, you can have that.
That happens
What's
too.
that? What's
precocious puberty is the one which, because of usually the child changes to adolescent is the phase. That phase, there's an increased surge in production of hormones. Like for men, it's called testosterone. For girls, it's called estrogen, progesterone. That's when the body changes and develops prepares itself for the second phase in life. But for some girls and some boys, without any reason, suddenly there's a increase in spurt of these hormones, surge of these hormones.
The 10-year-old boys with beards and moustache.
You develop this hormonal activity.
Okay, so I think parents just have to be a lot more aware when it comes to, you know, stuff like this, right? And be open. Is that what we're
Yes.
advocating here?
Yes. Be very open.
Yes.
If you have to go out on a date, please bring your boyfriend home. I want to sit with him and speak to him and tell him, if you do anything...
Did you do that when...
Yes, I meet all my boyfriends.
Like you're not a
my
policewoman.
daughter's
And to
boyfriends.
be physically examined by the mother.
No, not really. I just...
Send them to me, I'll do an analysis.
No. I'll just bring them over nicely, become their friends, and tell them if... I can't stop them.
Of course.
You tell them, don't do it. That's the thing that they want to do. So you tell them, if you want to do it properly. You know, I don't know. Just because I'm a Muslim doesn't mean that you have to say, oh no, you can't. You know. I think that's the wrong way to teach your children.
But also very important to stress not to get yourself hurt and also not to hurt somebody else. And think about the consequences. Are you ready to be responsible for it? I think this is very important.
Yeah, but you know, kids...
I would like to say at this point is, if you're going to force it down their throat, they will begin to hide. They'll begin to hide. They will do things.
Yeah, one step at a time.
They will do things at the back of it without telling you. And they will hide, and then later on you'll get to know the worst consequences.
Are your daughters going on dates already? Are they
They're going out with their friends, boyfriends, girlfriends. One of the things my father and mother together in their relationship taught me was how to respect my sister, how to respect other women. And I'm the grandfather on the set here. And we didn't have such things as dates those days, okay? No handphones, no nothing. You just kind of kuchu hotai and say hello in school. Hello in school and say I love you letters, that kind of stuff, right? But that's as far as we got. But the respect for the person, and I truly believe that the biggest sexual organ... The biggest sexual organ is the mind. The mind. And if you connect with the mind, you'll connect with everything else very appropriately.
Even at that age, being a teenager or young teen?
Yeah, appropriate. You pitch it appropriately and they will develop from that. It's
because I can imagine a lot of parents are like, my kid's never going to understand, you know. I mean, let's be honest here. That's the mentality of a lot of people.
Sure.
How are they going to understand? I just tell them, like, okay, this is this, that is that. But what you're saying is, you know, you should sit down with them and actually pitch it in a very chilled, cool manner.
Yeah, that's right. Appropriately.
You need to maintain your cool and calm.
And like both of them said, keeping the lines of communication open, that's crucial, because when the questions come, then you pitch, you answer those questions particularly. Other questions will come.
Now, I was on Saturday, I was just at one of the mamak stalls having breakfast, and I saw a really beautiful teenage girl. She was about maybe 13 or 14 years old, tall, lanky, but she was dressed, I don't know like what. I mean, she had a super crop top, like see-through little shorts and G-string, and she was sitting down with her dad having breakfast. Now, I didn't know what to make out of it, and I knew I was talking about this to you guys today, and I just want to know your opinion. Do you think the dressing and all that applies?
Are you sure it's her dad or somebody else?
It's the dad. I overheard. I'm quite capable, so I overheard she saying dad. And but you know, she looked like she was 14, going on 26, but exquisitely beautiful, with oozing a lot of sexuality. What do you have to say about that?
To me,
our last words.
To me, last words already.
Yeah.
For me, I think that for the girls to be dressed like that, they should dress like that, because I think that we have to get that perception away that when you dress like that, you're asking for sex.
But seriously, at 13, 14 years old?
It doesn't matter. That's dressing nowadays. They wear like, you know, sometimes my daughter wears like that. My brother-in-law goes, "Are you wearing something or not?" You know, it's like, because
you're very liberal, mom.
I would think that is too inviting. You know, in this society nowadays, it's really important to protect yourself in a correct situation. I mean,
we can keep it moderate.
More modest about it. Depending, I mean, you shouldn't, I think, wear that in mamak store or in a party or in...
Could do it.
It's so hard.
Oh my gosh. Seriously.
What happened to me was, when my eldest turned 18, I took my 14-year-old daughter to the supermarket and said, let's buy Helen something special. So we went to the lingerie area and we were looking at G-strings. So I was there, Hannah, what do you think Helen would like? Oh, what kind of G-string and all that? And this supermarket people were saying, dirty old man. But I was a father saying, keep up with the trend.
True.
Yeah,
true.
but of course, it's how you... The word sexuality is very different from sex and sexual intercourse. Sexuality is how you feel about your gender, how you express your gender, and how confident you are. It's not asking for it. It is the attitude of somebody else.
Sure.
But like everyone says, you play moderately, but you got to know yourself, and you got to know your values, the choices and consequence.
And it boils down to family and background and mom and dad.
The crucible of what's happening at home.
There you go. Well, thank you very much for enlightening us this morning here on Bella. Thank you, Dr. Karen. Thank you, Nigalin, Paul, and Dr. Tani. We are, we're done. There's so much to talk about.
Yes.
I've got so much more questions, Mama. We'll have part two another day. Okay, I'll make an appointment with you another day. So if you've missed today's very, very exciting show, you can always go to www.tonton.com.my. And tomorrow I'll be talking to Farah Falzana, the very, very popular Farah Falzana. She's going to be coming on set talking about the challenges she's facing as a very big celebrity in Malaysia. So please do stay tuned with us. And before I leave you, let's take a look at what some people out there crave, especially during this time of fasting, sahur and puasa.